This is the KnightShift podcast, powered by Black and Gold Banneret, your home for news and analysis from all UCF Knight sports. The KnightShift starts now. What is up, Knight Nation? Welcome to KnightShift. Jeff Sharon, Kyle Nash with you here. I know we were with you just, 48 hours ago, Kyle, but we're back with you for
so to get more.
Exactly. That's exactly the point. We're here to talk. We got a guest today. We got Andrew Sagona, Dan Frijoles from UCF Social, from Reddit /CFB, and numerous UCF related social media communities in the house. Eric Lopez is in the house as well. Still probably trying to yell at me about the whole substitution rule, and plenty more to talk about on this day. We're going to give our bye week number 1 grades for UCF football, and then we're going to talk just update everybody on soccer and volleyball. I think we're probably going to have Bryson a little bit later, but we'll see. Nonetheless, we do have we're starting to hit the ground running on soccer and volleyball in particular. So as they are actually already in or are very quickly approaching conference play. So let's dive into it right away. All right, boys. Well, can't ask for a better start in terms of win-loss, right? 3-0. Kyle, you've been giving grades out, of course, on your gamely recaps. I want to start by talking about the offense right now through one quarter of the season. First big road win, first big conference win, Kyle. Your grade on the offense so far.
I mean, listen, at this point, you got to go B+ to an A-, right? And listen, I'm only grading on a slight downpour because it did take a little time for KJ to elevate.
I'm going to ask you to pick one, B+ or A-.
Yeah, I'll say A- because it came through in the clutch. What the hell? So, I'll put it this way. If they weren't 3-0, I probably would have said B+. I'll be honest. But listen, obviously, RJ Harvey is a force to be reckoned with. The only way, I think, the more I think about it, the only reason I'm going to say an outright no eventually to him even getting on the plane to New York is probably because of Travis Hunter at this point in time, right? I mean, goodness gracious, if he can keep that pace, which I don't know if any human physically can, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not saying he's winning, by the way, RJ Harvey, but if he's doing enough to where he has a shot to get a flight to New York, and I'll put it that way. And KJ Jefferson, the way he's coming along, based, obviously, everybody was panicking. I shouldn't say everybody. Some cooler heads did prevail, especially on this panel. Let's be fair. But yeah, with the way they panicked after New Hampshire, we've seen a completely different dude. And you mentioned, you and I talked about it during the game, Jeff. The only reason I can make the argument, the only reason this group struggled as hard as they did wasn't the offense. Tell me the last time, gentlemen, you had a take where you said, wow, that UCF offense is why they won this game. It ain't happened lately. That's what I'm saying.
Define lately, because we've had some pretty good offenses that have overcome some pretty mediocre defenses over the especially during the hype years, I would say.
Well, you say the hype years. Yeah, I'm saying I don't know that I can pick a Malzahn game where the offense picks up the team.
Fair. Eric, your grade.
I would agree with Kyle, A-. The only thing I would say is if RJ wants to go to the Heisman, he might go down to Coral Gables and take a flight with Cam Ward, because I would include Cam Ward in the Heisman race from Miami, and then whichever quarterback wins the Alabama-Georgia game in 2 weeks, I think probably gets in the lead. But yeah, I mean, they have an identity. You know who they are. And they haven't really been stopped except themselves for the most part. So yeah, I would say A-.
Can I build on the identity thing, Eric? Because it's something you've said throughout, and it's a great point. But nobody's fooled that Gus's offense runs the football. I think where the identity piece comes into play is actually having a starting quarterback in a big road game. Period.
Andrew, what about you? What's your grade on the offense so far?
Honestly, and I'm by no means an expert, but I'd say probably a B plus, but a lot of that is being carried by the running core. It wasn't until the second half of the TCU game where KJ finally actually started to be able to throw the ball. I remember being very scared watching the New Hampshire game, seeing there was that one play where he just completely bobbled the ball, reminded me of the Blake Bortles game back in 2013, except he actually threw a touchdown. It's the stuff that KJ was doing in the first couple of games was scaring me, but he's getting bailed out by his receivers, Kobe Hudson. So it's not the QB play that's bringing up the offense, but it's definitely, I'd say, the running backs are the star of the team. And honestly, keep doing it. I don't care if we have to turn into Army and Navy. Just run the ball and maybe throw every couple of times just to keep them guessing.
Well, let me throw some numbers out there, too. Right now, UCF is sixth in the country in total offense with 570 yards a game. They were over 500 once again at TCU. Number 2 in the country in rushing offense at 375.7, but 93rd in passing offense. And I think that's – but one of the things I did look back on was their run-pass play selection, 73% run so far this season. And look, I get it. New Hampshire, Sam Houston, that's fine. But I think if Gus were sitting in here with us now, he would say that's exactly what I want. It doesn't matter if I'm playing New Hampshire or Alabama. If I'm able to run the ball 75% of the time, get 500 total yards and be 3-0, fine, right?
Well, yeah. Let me add to that, Jeff, too, and I mean no disrespect to Andrew as I make this point, but I get why your frijoles were damp after the first game. But again, I still think you're carrying too much of that. Obviously, it starts with the run game, but without KJ Jefferson's veteran presence, that TCU game doesn't get finished. If you want to stick to the stats, then you're just ignoring what a miles-on offense is. The quarterback's there to convert third downs, which KJ did in the late half of the game, right? And also delivering the final strike, which obviously RJ Harvey and the entire running core set up. I'm not naive, but to just completely trash KJ Jefferson he's the same person.
He's not trashing him. Come on.
No, and I don't mean here. I know you're not. Let me finish the statement before Jeff escalates another problem like he did on Saturday night.
Throw some flags out here. Anyway,
I think to cheapen KJ Jefferson as anything other than the ideal Malzahn style quarterback. This is what you're looking for, and that's what he did in a big game. He continued to be the guy that supplanted. I mean, granted, beating Florida doesn't mean as much now as it did when he did it. But listen, he's gone into people's houses in the SEC and did it, and he did it again on Saturday against the Big 12. And Elo made this point Saturday. John Rice Plumlee isn't doing that unhealthy. Timmy McClain wasn't doing that. I'm not even sure Dylan Gabriel could do that.
No, his socks would kind of get in the way on that. Not to mention, he's a big boy, which I think is a short yardage weapon.
Yes.
As well, which he used. And he makes, listen, is he the prettiest quarterback, quote unquote? Is he going to throw a perfect spiral and everything? No. Does anybody ever remember a pass he threw that, oh, wow, that was a bad pass. It should have been intercepted. No. He gave his receivers an opportunity for the ball. Is it pretty? No. But isn't that what you want, is to get your receiver like Kobe Hudson the opportunity for the ball, like on the touchdown? He hit him. That was not an easy throw, and Kobe took a hard hit.
Yeah.
He made the play.
Yeah. I want to wrap this up, and we'll go to the defense, and Andrew will be next. But I want to wrap the offense discussion by saying that I don't think we've seen barely 25% of what we're going to see from KJ this year. I think he is very close to really clicking with Kobe. I think it's almost like they've hid him a little bit until he feels 100% comfortable, like really throwing the ball to a whole bunch of new guys. And the longer that they don't have to play that card and can run the ball 7 out of 10 times, the better, right? Because then you can spring KJ on people and he's at fullness. All right, I want to talk to the defense. And Andrew, I want to start with you. Right now, this defense is 54th in the country, 11th in rushing defense, only giving up 64 yards a game on the ground, 95th in passing yardage at 238.7. They did give up a 400-yard passer against TCU, but again, that's Sonny Dykes for you. He's going to try and throw for 400 on anybody. Andrew, you're great on the defense.
Well, for the first half of the game, I thought it was going to be a D or something, but they kind of redeemed themselves for the end there. And I'll just go straight down the middle and say a C, maybe a C plus. And you pointed out an interesting statistic to me that I know this is a little more offense based, but TCU went 7 for 8 on third downs in the first half. We went 7 for 8 on third downs in the second half. And this kind of gave me kind of on a 10,000 foot level, kind of like George O'Leary vibes, where you just bend and bend, but you don't break. They broke a lot, but it was a lot of little breaks, but they didn't give up. They actually stood their ground at the end when it mattered. And I was impressed. Still, I'm very worried for what would happen if, when Arizona comes to town. They have a high-flying wide receiver, Cam Rising at Utah. I don't care for in the bounce house. Utah is going to be a very tough team to beat.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how we can develop. Luckily, those are later in the season, but hopefully the defense can get its footing before that.
Yeah, Noah Fifita, the quarterback at Arizona, he's, I think he's probably one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the Big 12 right now. You mentioned Rising. He's hurt. We don't know how long he's going to be out for Utah, but that's the last game of the season. For all we know, he may very well be back by then. So, Eric, go ahead. You're great on the defense.
I want actually the student of the game to go. I felt lost this weekend. There was no night class. I had nothing, no yes. I mean, Jake did a great job on the recap, but there was no grades. I feel like I was a student again, waiting.
You saying you're not doing your homework, Eric? Come on, man.
No,
I felt like I was a student. Like, we took an exam on Friday, and I still have to wait the whole weekend to find out what the grade was. So I want to hear what Kyle has to say here.
All right. We'll let the student handle that one. Go ahead.
No. And listen, and by the way, I know I got on your case earlier, but Andrew, a lot of stuff you said here was fantastic on the defense. I'm in lockstep with you with a lot of stuff. I will retort with this: the defense in the second half, I think, was 3 for 7, if the math is mathing in my head. In the second half. So obviously far better stopping the second half third downs to go right in complement with the offensive improvement that you talked about, which was a great stat, by the way, by you. Here's where I get concerned. And listen, obviously the secondary is a good place to point out. I am concerned about the edge rush. And it's funny. I was having a conversation with another Andrew, our good friend, Andrew Glukove, about the lack of edge rush presence we've seen in any game. And this isn't just about sacks, folks. Like TCU, not every play, because there were definitely some quick release plays where that was the option. For example, that screen pass they threw at the end that the entire defense sniffed out came out pretty fast. But shouts to Deshaun Pace. But with all that in mind, I feel like that edge rush is not enough. They are clearly missing Tremont Morris-Brash and Josh Saliscar. And this is no disrespect.
And John Walker, too.
John Walker is not on the outside. And frankly, I don't feel like they're missing John Walker yet. I'm going to say what I said. The interior has done their job from where I sit. Now, granted, and I know Elo's going to make this point. I'll hand it to him. There's something to be said for the run game with Sonny Dykes. We'll move on from that. We don't know that answer yet. That's why my grade is going to be very similar. I'm going to be a little bit more pessimistic than Andrew. I'm going to say C-, because I think there's a lot that can get worse versus what can get better in a defense we really haven't seen enough. We haven't seen a team that's going to come out and truly test them and try to punch them in the mouth. That is not Sonny Dykes, okay? This feels to me like more like the Oklahoma game last year, where, again, the coaching staff for Oklahoma refused to run the damn ball despite the fact it was the right thing, so.
If I may, before we go to you, Eric, right now, UCF no sacks. Actually, neither team had a sack on Saturday. UCF no sacks, 3 quarterback hurries on 40 some dropbacks, and team sacks. UCF right now dead last.
Also, Jeff, I would add probably your most disappointing stat: no turnovers or takeaways.
No turnover. Although they were able to get some turnovers in the previous 2 games, but that's not really saying too much. However, like I said, no sacks. 1 sack total on the season, Eric.
Yeah, not good. I mean, everything that Andrew and Kyle said is dead on. The only question, I have a follow-up to Kyle's point about Walker. If you had Walker, though, couldn't that cause some shuffling where maybe you move a guy to the outside that maybe could help on the outside, maybe bring, just a numbers game. That's all I'm saying from a numbers game.
And that's possible. Buddy, listen, let me be clear. I know you and I have had a difference of opinion on how much different Walker makes right now. But obviously you'd rather have him in the football game. Let's not get crazy. Yeah, they'd have one more body to kick outside maybe for a better rotation, but they still don't have anybody on the caliber of Saliskar or Brash in the mix.
The other guy they're missing is Henderson.
Correct.
Henderson's the other guy. So that's kind of why am I allowed to say incomplete? Can I give an incomplete grade? Because this is not a defense in full strength. Now we could argue that we don't know if we're going to get Walker Henderson or when we're going to get Walker Henderson.
Yeah, this is more of a progress report.
Progress. All right,
I got to hold you to your grade on this one, Hilo.
Well, then I'm going to go D. I got to go D. I mean, they were fortunate in a lot of ways that they didn't give up more points. I mean, think about the false start on 3rd and goal, which I thought was the biggest play of the game, where TCU easily could have scored a touchdown. Yeah. You're right. Pass rush, the lack of pass rush is a concern. They haven't been challenged against the run, in my opinion, yet.
Correct.
And they may not have to. One of the things about the Big 12 schedule is they're playing a lot of teams that like to throw the ball more so than run the ball. They avoid Oklahoma State. They avoid Kansas State. They avoid Kansas.
Well, Colorado likes to throw the ball.
Right. That's my point.
Yeah.
Oklahoma State, Kansas might have the 3 best backs. When you talk about Ollie Gordon, when you're talking about Kansas State and their system and the way they run the football, et cetera. So they might not have to be as good against the run against some of these teams that are pass happy. Utah would be the exception. I think Utah might be the best running, and West Virginia. We saw how West Virginia ran the ball last year.
Is all. Don't leave out Iowa State. Real quick point, Jeff. Yeah. I feel like Shedeur Sanders is the running game for Colorado.
I think you might be right. Yeah. No, I think you're right. I also don't want to sleep too much on West Virginia's pass offense because I was watching the 4th quarter of that game against Pitt, and actually that pass offense looked pretty lethal. It was their defense that was a real struggle.
Yeah, when you have to stack the box, you get opportunities.
I know, but they made the plays when they got some good receivers, West Virginia. All right. This is the one that's going to get a little rank. Special teams. Eric, I want to start with you.
Oh, man. Well, you know what they say. If you have nothing nice to say, better not to say it. I mean, I think we might have a good return game.
I will say, I will say this. 2 things. The return game is improved, and the kick coverage game is improved dramatically.
Now we just got to block people from, make kicks. That's all. That's as nice as I can say.
Hard to make kicks when they're getting blocked.
I don't know, Kyle, I don't know what grade you give for that, but D+.
Kyle, where do you go?
D+ is, I think, fine. I'm close to saying C- because Xavier Townsend is that good at shifting everywhere. If he broke off a touchdown, maybe I put the little extra credit and put them to C+. But man, listen, I'm right there with you. Jeff, your point about improved block coverage is not getting enough talk. Mitch McCarthy's doing about what he should do and hasn't trailed off into the below 40 punt average without punts inside the 20. I'm giving him credit there.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think his shortest punts have all landed inside the 20.
Correct.
He hasn't dropped a touchback yet, so.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think the punchline is this, my friend. If you're in a position where points are getting taken off the board, I think Eric and I both agree you weigh that more heavy, which is why where we're at.
Yeah. Yeah. Andrew?
Oh, boy. I'm not going to name any names because I am
you're
not
a nice
the kind
guy.
of
I
person.
get it.
Yes. I will say something. I'll just say this. I know everyone's going to be ragging on Colton for missing some kicks, but the blocking was horrendous.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was like, please forgive me, UCF players. I don't mean to be ragging on you, but it was like tissue paper at times.
It
Like,
was the one that I think, like, if the one that I looked at and I was like, oh man, that's rough. I think one of them, Kyle, you could probably remember this, Andrew too. One of them, somebody just came up straight up the middle, almost untouched.
Yeah, it was nutty. I don't even have. Listen, let me say this to Andrew too. Nothing you say can be as mean as what angry Bryson Turner dropped on Saturday. Okay, our own Bryson Turner, the mild-mannered man himself, was going to work on the special team.
He was so mad he flew out to New York. That's why he's not here. He flew to New York.
Town.
Left
And
the state.
he didn't even need an airplane to do it, Eric Lopez. That's how angry he was. But no, so rest assured, Andrew, nothing you say will be worse than what he did.
I wanted to put this, by the way, you mentioned the kickoff coverage too, Kyle. Colton Boomer, 19 kickoffs, 17 touchbacks.
And also the other kid, Evan Morris.
Morris got a touchback. Grant Reddick had 4 kickoffs. He had no touchbacks. But they were just testing him out on that, I think, during the New Hampshire game. All right. Let's put this last category. We'll put under the umbrella of intangibles. So it'll be things like, coaching, just the other stuff. Okay. Our teachers used to call it our behavior grades. All right. So, and I want to start with Andrew on this. Your intangibles, coaching, team improvement, team unity, those kinds of things. How would you rate them so far based on what you've seen through 3 games, Andrew?
Well, I didn't put a whole lot of stock into the first 2 games, with no offense to New Hampshire and Sam Houston. I'm way too nice of a person. I'm sorry.
Never apologize for being nice, Andrew. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was trying to avoid, false hope, that we held, I think, 17 combined points between Sam Houston and New Hampshire. I think, so I thought, oh man, the defense is going to be real good this year. And obviously RJ Harvey, Penny Boone, Richardson, everyone, Montgomery is just doing a heck of a job. But going to intangibles, strangely, I think the intangible, someone brought this up on Twitter, and I thought it was a good point. This might have been a game that we lose last season. We basically pulled a reverse Baylor. And it was away, no less. I mean, I know TCU isn't exactly Boone Pickett Stadium in terms of crowd effect like it would be in NCAA 25, but it's still away. It was a hot night in Texas, and they got it together in that last half. There's something to be said about the coaching staff not running around with a bunch of chickens with their heads cut off and making sure that the players aren't either. We'll see how that translates into more games down the road where surely we're going to be in other sticky situations. But the fact that they were able to get it done, great job. And we got a first conference win out of the way a lot sooner than we did last year.
That's a good point. I and Kyle, I got you next, but I didn't want to say, I think it was, I forget who said it was, maybe it was Bryson who said it was somewhat akin to the Louisville game. And I didn't really believe that, but on second thought, a win like what you had at TCU, and like Andrew said, I get it, TCU is not Alabama, but or Louisville in 2013 for that matter. But to win a game on the road in conference in a hostile environment in, oh, by the way, really unbelievable heat also when you were down 28-7. I think the similarity there is a win like that gives you a lot of confidence going into the bye week. And I think that's something. I mean, if there's a name of the game in any college sport, Kyle, it's confidence. If you have confidence, that takes care of a lot of ills, right?
I mean, listen, there are friends of us who don't believe in momentum, but yet somehow I still think that friend would believe in Murphy's Law. Anyways, yeah, absolutely, this is true when it comes to the situation and confidence. Kobe said as much on the post-game interview that Jake Ferraro put up on the Black and Gold Banner at YouTube channel. So, I mean, how do I say no to any of that? Here, and both Andrew and Jeff mentioned the Heat. And again, Andrew, no disrespect, you're a guest in this house. I'm not belittling you, but I'm getting kind of a feel of a Batman versus Bane and Batman Rising in this, right? You use the dark, I embrace it. You use the heat, I embrace it. The way they trained in the offseason in all of that heat here in damn Florida, where we also have humidity, Gus made it a point to get those boys out there in those nasty conditions to, oh, it's hot. You're from Florida, fools. That's supposed to be where you live, just like Bane lives in the dark.
It's a different kind of heat in Texas, though, isn't it?
It's a wimpier heat. They don't have humidity. That's I said what I said, Jeff Sharon. So when it was hot and steamy and sweaty, they, in fact, did not care.
Kyle Nash throwing hands at the Dallas Heat. I love it.
I said what I said, Jeff Sharon. No, listen, I mean, part of this is hyperbole, but in truth, we keep mentioning the Heat. I honestly think this was an advantage UCF in that particular piece. And that's one intangible I am sure as heck handing this group, right?
Moreover, they had a little bit more advantage than if, say, North Dakota State, who plays in a dome, would be playing in that situation. I'll grant you that.
I mean, you don't need a dome. Do you think them boys in Ames, Iowa, for example, deal with this? That's going to be a real thing, right? What about them boys in Colorado who are up in the mountains in that thin air when they come here to the bounce house? You don't think that's going to matter? Just throwing it out there, Jeff Sharon.
That's going to be an interesting take on that. Eric, I'll give you the last word on the intangible. By the way, Kyle, yeah, and Andrew's calling you out on that. That's going to be great. So Kyle, what's your grade on the intangibles side?
No, and by the way, props to my man, the damn free holies himself, Andrew, for quoting me.
This is gonna end up on a Texas Longhorn message board before we know it. I know it's going to happen.
What do the Longhorns have to do with anything? Hey, I'm cheering for them, anyways. No, but punchline being this, man. There's the leadership that KJ Jefferson brings. There's your boy Jeff Deshaun Pace handling business as a transfer and doing a lot of things. And I know a lot of people are putting Gus's coaching on blast, which is ridiculous to me. Eric, listen, I know we argued about the rule and its properness, which wasn't really the real argument. I agree with you that they should have adjusted sooner, 100%. But the fact that they eventually did and won the football game, to me, says miles too. The one intangible we won't get for tonight's grading is how much different they approach things with a pass-happy team, especially in the form of the Colorado Buffalo, such as they are. That will be telling to me in how much the coaching staff and Ted Roof is capable of adjusting. There's plenty of evidence in the TCU game. Don't get it twisted. We mentioned the 3-7 third down conversion rate as an improvement to the first 7 third downs being converted, obviously. So, but for me, to give this group less than a B feels cruel. I'll put it that way.
Elo?
I would agree with a B. I agree with Kyle about the heat. I don't agree with the reasoning he gave the heat about Texas being wimpier. I'm not going to go there. But I do, because Texas can be hot too. I've been to Texas, so I'm not going to.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not ignoring it.
I do think it is an advantage, though, for UCF, especially the style of play by running the ball down. I think that did help UCF wear them down from that standpoint. And to be honest, UCF probably, and I know fans don't like this, but they should take advantage and play more early day games because of that. The NFL, there's a reason why the Florida teams in the NFL play 1:00 games in September, unless they're on prime time or whatever, because they want to take advantage of that humidity and they wear the whites and everything like that.
So, Elo, let me repackage that real quick because I think you made a great point. I want to make sure I understand. This is me going full student of the game on you. What you're saying is, let's pretend that TCU was matched at their amount of heat tolerance. UCF's style of play, tiring people down, enhances that heat resistance. Is that what you're getting at?
Yes. Yeah, okay, cool. I absolutely do, because you're wearing them down. They were on the field more.
That's a great point, man. I love that.
TCU kept throwing the ball more, which is why I thought they let UCF off the hook. That's why I'm like, try to run the ball to keep them on it. They didn't. Hey, that's Sonny Dykes' problem there. So I do agree. I actually think UCF would benefit, and I agree 100% not to look ahead. If I'm playing Colorado, I absolutely want that game early in the day at noon Eastern. Absolutely, for that reason. Now, I do give it a B. The only thing I will bring up, because I failed to do this, that was my mistake on Saturday. My issue with Gus and arguing with the officials about that, you're the play caller. You can't get caught up in that stuff if you're the play caller. If he's just the CEO, okay, I get it. Fine. You can argue. You shouldn't have time to get dealing with that. You got to worry about play calling. That's something that has to be, he has to, and I think he knows that. He may not agree with the officials. They're probably not sending him Christmas cards, I'm going to assume. But moving forward, he's definitely not sending one to me. But moving forward, he's got to be subconscious about that. You can't wear multiple hats. If you want to wear multiple hats, you have to keep that in mind, because that also throws off your players, because they need to know the plays. So I think but I agree. I think a B is a good grade.
Elo, it's a good point, and I love how you stated it, that there's only you can only do, it's not so much hats or that whether he's intelligent enough to do it. You only have so much time in the series. You're 1,000,000,000% right. My question is, then who makes that campaign? Is that something? Hey, Hinshaw, let him know.
No, I think based on what I know, and we're gonna wrap it up after this, but I think there's a little bit of gamesmanship also going on there, because I think long term that can also affect things down the road in conference play as well. You may see that crew again. The word may get around to the other crews in the conference. I don't know. I mean, there's some value to that, I think. So we got to bid farewell to Andrew real quick. But Andrew, where can Knight fans follow you and follow your work? Because I know you're very active on the subreddit, the college football subreddit on Reddit, which is my favorite place on the internet. So where can people follow you, Andrew?
Well, they can follow me on there at DamfreyHoles. That's my username. Y'all can follow me on Twitter also, DamfreyHoles. I'll be getting around to eventually posting stuff on it again, but I do have a professional Twitter
You're
account.
Busy now. You're way busier than you used to be, man.
I know.
Life be life, and Andrew, we appreciate you. It's all good.
Man. Hey, it's good to talk to you. I always love running into you at the press box, because it's always so good to see you. And also, by the way, I saw the stuff that you were doing during the Sam Houston game about dropping some stuff on Reddit, I believe, about the having to do with Arnold Palmer and childhood cancer. And my wife works in Arnold Palmer, and that was some really tremendous work that you were doing. And obviously it's a great cause. I'm glad that was getting more attention on that Reddit. That's one of the busiest corners of the internet, and especially in the sports internet. And that was tremendous. So Andrew, thank you for doing that. And hey, enjoy the week off, and we'll see you for.
Can I double down my thanks?
Oh, yeah.
Somebody whose family, myself, my mom retired after 4 years at working at ORH, and with Winnie Palmer and Arnold and a lot of things. Man, that was cool work you did, bro. I want to add to that. Jeff's right.
Yeah, man. And we'll see you for the Colorado game whenever we get a time for that.
Absolutely. And pleasure being on. And I appreciate the thanks on the tweets. It was a privilege to be able to do it. It was a good occasion that came across.
All right, man. Have a good one.
You too, guys. Good night.
All right. Stick around. Night Shift returns with a little bit more after this. For all the latest news and analysis from every UCF sport, visit blackandgoldbanneret.com, your home for the UCF Knights on SB Nation. We bring you all the latest news and in-depth analysis from across Knight Nation From football and hoops to golf and tennis. If you want to stay on top of all things UCF, visit blackandgoldbanneret.com. Powered by SB Nation. We're back here on Night Shift. Jeff, Eric, and Kyle with you on this. We're recording this on Monday night. And as of right now, September 16th, we still don't know the time of UCF's next game. Obviously, we have for football. We know that they're playing Colorado, but we don't know when. And that's because the Big 12 and their television partners have placed that game into what's known as the 6-day window, which means we won't know for another week. Next Monday, right, Eric, is when they will release the times. And that's not just the UCF Colorado game. That's several games across the conference because they're just kind of in wait and see mode. So tell us about the 6-day window. Describe it for us, and then what's the reasoning behind it right now?
It's unique to the point where I'm actually going to write about this on blackandgoldbanneret.com. We're recording this on late Monday night. As soon as we are done recording, I will be, as soon as we're done recording, I'll be writing a majority of this piece. That will also be complemented by the TV numbers for UCF TCU, which should come out at some point on Tuesday. So the Big 12 is basically given a 6-day window, as is most of the Big 10. And I'll explain in a moment why that is also important. Basically, they want to see what happens this weekend. For example, Colorado is playing Baylor in Big 12. Oklahoma State's playing Utah in the big Big 12 game of the weekend. I think some of those results will dictate what direction they want to go with from a network standpoint. Now, I brought up the Big 10. I'm like, well, what does the Big 10 have to do anything with that? Well, Fox is obviously the partner of the Big 12 and the Big 10. That impacts the TV numbers. One thing I have learned, just learned, Matt Sarniak, shout out to him. He projects college football schedules for a living, which bless him.
You can make a living doing that? Wow.
At least on the side, and God bless him, because there's a lot to follow. One of the things I've learned.
I'll be honest, I don't want that damn job.
Yeah,
neither do I.
Someone's got to do it, though. All right.
Bless him. That's why I say he deserves a medal, whatever praise. That's why I'm giving him. So mystery, follow him. So what it's interesting is Fox is part of the Big 10 deal. The Big 10 deal this year, kicking in. Actually kicked in last year. The Big 10 must have a game on Fox, CBS, and NBC. On Fox, usually at noon, CBS 3:30, NBC night game.
So this is weekly, by the way.
Weekly, every week.
Thank you.
So that is significant because it impacts the big noon kickoff assignment. It just a lot of things. Fox, in theory, if they're not happy with the noon game on the Big 10, in theory, could try to trade the pick to a CBS and swap. And the reason why that's important is if you look at the Big 10 slate this weekend, Ohio State was moved to Peacock. So you only have Michigan, Minnesota as an option for noon. The other two teams in the Big 10 are LA teams. And, playing a 9 a.m. Pacific body time, 9 a.m. game is probably not ideal. So in theory, they could switch with CBS, where CBS gets the game at noon instead of 3:30. The Big 12 then moves to that noon slot for Fox, if Fox wants to do that. And then they would probably pick one of those, a marquee Big 12 game, either Oklahoma State, Utah, or UCF, Colorado. The other part of this that we don't know is does ESPN have the first rights or second rights? They have some slots, noon, either on ESPN or ABC, that are available, that they could put that game, the Big 12 games, in that window as well. So basically, these executives in suits have to negotiate and figure out what games they want. They're going to be watching games on Saturday, and then at around 12:30 a.m., probably 1 a.m., they will announce press releases of where these games will at. Some of you will wake up and say, wait, what? What time is this game on? So that's probably what's going to happen.
So there are 6 games in the Big 12 schedule that are locked, that are now thrown into the stew in this window. Okay. In addition to UCF, Colorado, TCU, Kansas, Cincinnati, Texas Tech, BYU, Baylor, Oklahoma State, K-State, and Iowa State, Houston. What is your two-part question, Eric? Where do you think they're going to put Colorado, UCF? And number 2, what is going to be the real determining factor in the coming week, Like which game will factor in the most into deciding where that game goes?
Who are you cheering for to keep UCF at Big Noon?
Yeah, better question. Thank you.
I think there's two games. Utah, Oklahoma State. I think if Utah beats Oklahoma State, that knocks them out as far as a noon kick on Fox for sure. I think UCF Colorado and again, I'm going to write about this. So if there's something that gets tweaked, just check the article. But as of this recording on Monday night, as I stare at Kyle's pretty face, I will say that UCF Colorado is going to be a day game. I think it's going to be either a noon or a 4:00 game on Fox, or it's going to be a noon game on ABC or ESPN. And I think the second part of that will depend on, does Colorado beat Baylor and Dion goes in 3-1 going against an undefeated UCF team. That's a lot more attractive than Dion at 2-2. Even though I think regardless, I think Colorado UCF would outrate the Oklahoma State Kansas State game because of Dion factor. Dion would outdraw that. However, as somebody told me on Monday, the conferences tend to nudge the network sometime and say, look, can you just put this game on the bigger slot because we want to keep everybody happy and not the one team, you know what I mean? Like, hey, don't put Dion on that slot all the time. It's basically the code word.
We're not the Dion conference. We're the Big 12.
Say, from the conference's perspective, I mean, I don't believe in Oklahoma State. No disrespect to Jordan Jefferson, but Kansas State, I think the conference would be interested in Kansas State getting some pub because they're a good football team and they're a brand that might be there at the championship game.
I think also, well, there's kind of a balancing act here, right, Eric? Because, on one hand, it's still early in the season. So, do you burn the Dion card now if you think that they're going to be, that they're going to struggle like they did at the end of last season? They weren't very good. Or you can still always put them on, right?
Exactly.
Or
that's right. I mean, right. An executive's got to think: do I want to burn a Colorado game now, or do I try to maybe pass on them? Especially if Oklahoma State and Kansas State are undefeated and are both in the top 25. They're both in the top 25 right now.
Right.
UCF and Colorado are not. So there is the appeal of the ranked versus ranked matchup. And do you want the backlash if you have Dion unranked against UCF unranked as the backlash that you might get? Who knows? That's part of the thinking process. That's why we have what people ask, why do we have a 6-day window? That's why, because these conversations are going to take place all week. They're going to have scenarios where if this happens and this happens, and the networks will also be talking because they might try to do a swap. Hey, if you let us get this game, maybe we'll let you pick this team down the road or pick this game later on. You know what I mean? There's always some swaps. Like if you hear about a CBS Fox trade swap on the time slot, it probably means that Fox made a deal where, hey, we'll give you, we want that 3:30 slot, and in return, you'll get to pick first on a future week or a future, you know what I mean, like season type like that, which could matter later in the year, depending on how you want to play this.
Pointing out those politics is awesome, by the way, Eric. I appreciate that insight. But let me ask this question. Two things that stand out. First of all, the point you make about Colorado relevance. Let's also talk about they have an alleged future first-round pick quarterback, although if he keeps dissing other quarterbacks in the handshake afterward, his stock will continue to plummet in the eyes of certain NFL scouts here nor there at the moment. But listen, we just had, and I mean, not to mention other people on this podcast, but listen, the guy who's one of the best at doing it in the nation, in Joel Klatt, start clamoring for Travis Hunter as a Heisman candidate. That certainly has something attached to it. And if you're an executive who has an advisor as smart as Eric Lopez is here, he'll be like, listen, it's only a matter of time because humans are human that Travis Hunter gets hurt. Is he still healthy for this game? And
right.
And you mentioned the thing about Dion Star. It will collapse. They will struggle. You cannot win football games without a good offensive line. So, yeah, I think all those are things that will play heavily into leading into needing politics. Hey, listen, I want to burn this card. What can I give you later in the season when these other teams like a Kansas State? Is there another Kansas State game we can help you with down the line? Like, I don't know if Kansas State and Utah play, for example, but something of that ilk, right?
Well, the other factor is we know if UCF can draw as a power conference school. They drew as a G5 school, but You look at last year. Remember last year, they were on FS1s a lot.
But you know, these executives, man, they're all scared of uncertainty. That actually works.
Right, no, that's my point. You're making my point. And that's my point. Like, you know, you may say, well, yeah, we got Dion, but do people really care about UCF? Where's UCF again? Like, people, you know, whereas the one thing the casual person, and this is why the ranked matchup is important, is if you see a number next to a team versus another team that has a number next to it, that draws. That's really the whole reason why people always why does college football have a preseason? That's why. It's to attract. It's marketing. So a top 25 game usually draws more than a non-top 25 game. What makes this so unique is you have one person that draws more people eyeballs to the sport than anybody can right now in the sport, in Deion Sanders. It's unique.
Yeah.
It's a unique
to what extent does the fact that, remember, this is Deion's first appearance. He's a Sunshine State kid, right? Fort Myers, Florida State graduate. To what extent is the fact that this is Deion's first game coaching in the state of Florida a factor here? And let's just lay aside for the moment the fact that his alma mater is 0-3.
I think that's a storyline, but I think that's a bigger draw from a box office standpoint. That's why I think some people might be surprised at how many Colorado fans will be in the building on that Saturday. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you're going to get a good number in Tampa, which is a major market. You're going to get a good number in Miami, which is a major market. All those other West Palm, Southwest Florida, obviously Orlando, right?
There's a familiarity. I agree. I think if you asked secretly, if you told Fox or whoever has the first pick, right now, you got to make a pick today, they would pick Colorado UCF just because they know what they're getting with Deion. But they want to wait it out because there are some politics involved and you want to play nice with the Big 12. And you don't want – because if you're Brett Yormark, what you don't want is Kansas State and Oklahoma State complaining to you like, we're both undefeated, we're both in the top 20, and yet – we're on cable on ESPN, let's say, hypothetically, while Colorado and UCF are unranked and they're on Fox at noon, for example, right? That's what happens behind the scenes type of stuff. Now, at the end of the day, the TVs will do what they do. Because remember last year, Fox they rode Colorado the whole month of September. So, you know,
until the bottom fell out.
Well, but you milk it as long as you can, to Kyle's point. And you wonder, again, if you're Fox too, is like, where do you want your big noon show to be? Do you want it in Orlando? Do you want it to be in where I don't remember where the Oklahoma State Kansas State game is, but you know that's another factor they got to think about. Is that Joe Klatt? What game does he want to do? Because I'm sure he'll get asked. To your point, Kyle, as well. So there's but again, part of this too is I think all this is in play if Colorado wins against Baylor at 3-1.
By the way, Oklahoma State, Kansas State is in Manhattan, but go ahead.
Well, disrespect to Manhattan. It ain't New York, so I'll take Orlando. But so
don't knock on the Little Apple here. That's a great college. Anyway,
I'm not planning on heading there. But look, I mean, Colorado got to win because that helps their case. If you lose and you're 2-2, that's a tougher sell at that point to justify it being a marquee TV slot. The other thing is too that ESPN may decide. You know, if they end up with the game is, hey, you know, we might put this. Well, one thing I will say, I would be shocked if UCF and Colorado is a night game. I know there's some night slots, primetime slots like FS1, Open and stuff like that. There is no way that game's dropping to that slot. No way. I think that's going to be one of the Houston game, Jeff, you brought up. I think there's a couple other dog games, we'll call it, whatever, that you can easily put in that slot. For the Big 12 and FS1. So I think this will be,
much.
I think this, if I had to put right now, I'm going to just go ahead and make the prediction here. I think this will either be a noon kick on Fox or ESPN ABC or a 4:00 Fox pick. I think it's going to be one of those two.
Let me
Kyle, when do you want the game? Since you'll be there.
Dude, please, God. Listen, I got 2 kids, man. I love having dinner with them after a dang UCF game. I'm just saying, especially after getting a chance to not play therapist on Night Shift Live. But listen, here's my whole thing, Eric, and let me add this too, because you mentioned Brett Yormark wanting 2 of his alleged top tier teams, and I say that because Oklahoma State, no disrespect, Jordan Johnson, or to the big mullet himself, but if I'm Brett Yormark, I'm also deathly afraid if I push them out there and they don't get a number, that does way more damage than anything that they could potentially bring. Is that a factor, Eric?
I think everything's a factor. That's why you have the 6-day window. You go over every scenario.
Right.
And these networks, what they have is they have people that could probably give them a ballpark range like, hey, if you pick this game on this slot, you're probably going to draw X amount. If you go with this game and this. The one thing you want to avoid, okay, like one of the interesting items on Monday was people are like, why did NBC got Ohio State, Michigan State that will air at 7 o'clock on Peacock on the 28th? And people are like, why is NBC doing that? Well, they want to do it for subscribers, obviously.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Number two is they don't want to waste that game going head-to-head against Alabama, Georgia, which is going to be a monster number.
Yeah.
So instead of going
head, you kind of want to clear everything because you're going to get slaughtered anyway. So
correct. So rather than do that, then just take advantage of your subscribers and then have all the Buckeye fans subscribe and get your numbers on the stream and work on that because you're going to take the L. That's the thing. Networks won't admit this, but sometimes they will take a loss on a certain slot because they know that the other network has a bigger game, and then so they try to focus on other time slots to win.
Yeah. Not a bad idea to hold a giant brand hostage too for the stream the subscriber servers. As much as I hate that strategy, it is a smart one.
Yeah.
That's a big part of NBC's strategy with the Big Ten.
Hey, don't get me started with this horse crap where they put an NFL playoff game on Peacock, bro. I will be angry.
I understand, but this is what this tells you. Here's the thing: the tough part for the Big 12 is they're not in control completely in this. The SEC controls the slots on ESPN and ABC. The Big Ten controls the slots on CBS, Fox, and NBC. Those are the two conferences that control television right now in football in a massive way. And that, you wonder, is that good or bad for the sport? So it depends who you ask. But
well,
that's where we're at.
That's the other thing is because I remember the Big 12 release said that, remember, it's not the networks that decide, right? It's the conferences. Well, who among the conferences, who has the pecking order? Right? So
regardless of how overrated Wisconsin and Oregon are, that's still the truth.
Yeah. So
no, that's the thing. I mean, Michigan, Minnesota is probably going to get a noon window on CBS or Fox that week because it's Michigan and Minnesota. It's the Big Ten, and they have to be on somewhere. That's why Kentucky potentially could be on ABC for the third time this year if that Ole Miss game gets put on ABC.
That's something.
With apologies to Jeff, no matter how much I don't dig the Golden Gophers, they're still going to get the control.
Yeah, the Gophers. All right. All right. I want to move over real quick before we head out for the evening. Soccer and volleyball. Bit of a coming back to earth week for these programs. I want to start with volleyball because they had a pretty big tournament up in Tallahassee, playing two in-state opponents, FAU and number 21 ranked Florida State. FAU, it was looking bleak there for a minute first, Eric. They were down 2-1 and then came back. 4 players for UCF combined for the lion's share of kills in this game, or in this match. Alexia Kuhl, Ava Armour, Britt Carlson, and Heidi Bondi, all in double figures. And UCF ended up winning it in the fifth, 15-10. That's pretty gutsy. Now, I know FAU is nothing to write home about, but still not easy. And then they come back and they face Florida State, who, like we said, is ranked. UCF takes them to 4, but falls. And now it's a double dip against Nevada, who was not very good, but that's their final tune-up prior to conference. Or actually, no, there's one more weekend of non-conference. No, this is the weekend of conference. The last weekend of conference. Okay, so it's Nevada, Maryland at home this weekend before we start conference play. So thoughts on the split weekend for Jenny Maurer and company? That was going to be a tough ask against Florida State no matter what, but I think they got to be overall pretty satisfied with the result now.
Well, fortunate you got the win against FAU. Better to come back and win that. I mean, they've had a couple 5-setters. This team is still, I think it's the most mysterious team still of the whole fall. We don't know, honestly. They haven't played a whole match yet. I think they're still young. Part of me feels like they're a year away. They don't have the explosiveness on offense. They kind of need everything to go a certain way. They need the balance offensively. I think they hit under 200 in the FSU loss. Struggled a little bit against FAU in that match. It's hard to say because, again, it's a young team and they've been on the road the whole time and playing in neutral courts. They come home this week and then the Big 12. We're going to learn a lot. Hopefully they tune up. You mentioned Nevada and all that. Then you're going to find out when Big 12 play starts. They're going to open at Kansas and at Kansas State. That's probably 2 NCAA tournament teams. That's where you're going to find out what this team has. Do they have enough firepower offensively? Do they have enough growth? There's some people have commented to me, have reached out because they've watched some of the matches. Like, man, I don't seem to have that explosiveness offensively they've had in the past. And I'm like, well, yes, they don't have an All-American.
They don't have somebody who had 2,500 career kills.
Correct. That tends to happen. A little bit. That plays a factor. So they're going to have to. And these players are still young. Armour's a sophomore. It's just a very young team. So I think I just think it's unknown. I don't know what to say. They took a set from FSU. It was a kind of a swing match. We'll see. I think the proof will be proven in the Big 12 starting right away with Kansas, which I believe will be a televised ESPNU match.
Yeah.
There. So I think it's still too early to tell how good this team is, what the potential is of this year. The good news is they haven't had a bad loss to date. The bad news is they haven't really had a tough non-conference schedule per se outside of the Florida State match. But I think that's by design because you want this team to grow and be ready for Big 12 play.
I did want to mention one player I've been really impressed with, Alexia Cool. Against Florida State, 7 kills on 14 swings, no errors, 1 block assist. She's been really rock solid in the middle, and at 6'7", and she's a tremendous athlete. And I mean, what a find she has been so far. I do think that she might be. Yeah, I think you're right. We're seeing a sort of the shift in style from the American style where we got one athletic outside hitter who we're just going to feed all day to more of a team defense style, pass and serve, side out, however you can. And relying on your size in the middle. And I think that when you got a player like Alexia Cool, that's pretty easy to do. She's 6'7". Over to soccer real quick. We actually had our first Big 12, in addition to, of course, football this past week, and our first Big 12 conference game for women's soccer. They beat Houston 5-0 to start the conference play. And really good way to start after that disappointing and 1-0 loss at USF to start conference play like that against Houston. I know Houston's struggling a little bit right now, but you can't really do much better than that. And right now for UCF on the women's soccer side, Chloe Netzel, yet another goal, actually another couple of goals. Mia Asenjo picked one up as well. And UCF outshot Houston 14-9 and got the job done to start conference play. Can't really start much better than that, Eric.
No, and it was good to see somebody other than Chloe Netzel score. I think that's the key with this team. Chloe Netzel's had to keep. No, I mean she's had to carry the load all season. 8 goals. They want to go deep. They have to have others involved. Have to step up. That's why they lost the South Florida match recently. She was the only one that was able to get some shots off, and teams are going to focus on her. So that was a good confidence builder for their offense. To start with is Houston. Now they go to, of all places, Ames, Iowa for soccer, which I don't know how to describe that commercial flight. I think there's one to Des Moines and then you bus to Ames, Iowa.
There might be some hitchhiking involved.
Yeah, it's a flight. By the way, listen, as the guy on the panel here, Elo, that covers UCF women's basketball and watch this team have Caitlin Peterson be a central figure. I know what it is to ask for.
That's actually a pretty fair comparison. That's a fair comparison. Have balance for them. If they want to mix here in the Big 12, the Big 12 is a top 4 league right now. The RPI came out for the first time on Monday. UCF 62. Reminder, soccer is a small sample sport, so the RPIs are going to go way up and way down in the coming weeks. Just because
Iowa State right now 214.
I want to win that. I mean, they need to win that. But here's the weird thing. So they go to Ames, Iowa, and this is realignment 2024, everybody. You go to Ames, Iowa, play on Thursday, okay? Kai, you're taking notes here because you're a traveler explorer like I am. Then I'm just assuming they're flying commercial. So they're probably flying back Friday to get ready for a Sunday match against Arizona State, I believe is the home opponent a week from this Sunday. Am I right on this or am I wrong?
I at Iowa State and then home Arizona State Sunday.
That is a quick turnaround. So Coach Sahedek talks about
it's better than having to come back here and then fly out to.
Oh, I agree. Well, I think if that was the case, they wouldn't even come back here. They would just go directly to where they have to go to play, like basketball.
That's the point you have to make, Jess Sharon. That says everything, buddy.
I'm just saying.
But I do think that's something to keep in mind. They play the Iowa State match. Then you got to come back, quick turnaround. You have a home match Sunday. The Sunday legs. These are what coaches always tell you, the Sunday legs. UCF's depth needs to come through for them to get these results. Otherwise, that's going to be the difference between making the NCAAs or contending in the Big 12 and not. So we'll see what happens. Yeah. But that's a positive start.
Yeah. And one other thing I noticed about the schedule, compared to what we were used to is now they have the extra day between the matches. Remember, it used to be Friday, Sunday. Now it's Thursday, Sunday, typically. I mean, obviously some exceptions, but having that extra day definitely helps. All right, finally, men's soccer, kind of a rough week for them as well. Wednesday, they went down to FIU, and in a shootout, man, they fall 4-3 down in Miami, and then they come back, and in a really chippy game with South Florida, it ends up in a 0-0 draw in their last game before starting conference play. That FIU game down there on Wednesday, the 11th, UCF led 2-1 after the first half. FIU got a couple quick ones. Jonas Fritzsche scored in the 62nd minute to get UCF back to 3-3, and then Diego Castillo of FIU with the game winner in the 66th minute. So a lot of action back and forth. FIU actually scored 2 goals within 7 seconds in that game early in the second half. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say this is not exactly the way that Coach Calabrese would have preferred to head into conference play with their first conference game against James Madison in the Sun Belt Conference. That's right, the Sun Belt Conference on Saturday. But at least they have 6 days off after the South Florida game to gear up for JMU out in Harrisonburg before their home conference opener next Friday, the 27th, against Georgia State. Thoughts, Eric, on those 2 games down against in-state opponents? Because I know that I was like, man, right?
Yeah, it's a rough week. Rough week. FIU, that was an electric atmosphere down there. It was packed.
Yeah.
They went into a buzzsaw. It was an up-tempo game. That's what FIU likes to do, and it was a
shootout. They got a nice atmosphere down there in FIU,
yeah,
man. That was nice.
Scott Carr, who used to work at UCF, they've done a nice job building that. FIU's had a lot of great success. I think FIU really, if you look at all their sports, men's soccer has been their most successful of all those sports. And they've had a lot of injuries. They had like 10 players out. And they still found a way to win. That's why they had this huge celebration. It was their first win of the season. I think.
By the way, guess who was the coach before the current guy? Scott Calabrese.
Scott Calabrese, right. So they were, that was a buzzsaw. I think FIU, I think FIU, if they can get healthy, I think that loss won't look as bad later as it does now. The draw with USF is rough. You're right. You described it. Our newest member of our team, which we will announce at the end of the show, Jeffrey will discuss. What a way for him to welcome aboard to a scoreless draw on a Warren I-4. Clearly, I'm sure the coaching staff worked on the defensive side. They had to be pleased with how they played defensively against South Florida after the FIU match, but couldn't get anything offensively. So the question now is, do they get Luca Dorado back for conference? That was the hope when he got hurt against Wake Forest, is that he would be back by conference. Here we are, conference play. And then Shane Wright's obviously a little more older now at goalkeeping, but this team has been definitely dealt with some injuries. So time to regroup, but now it's a new season. And, their RPI is not good right now, but that could change easily with the Sun Belt, with the quality teams that they have, starting with JMU going there on the road. Yeah. That's going to set the tone. JMU, remember, was the team that it really kind of started the UCF tailspin last year. UCF was playing them on Halloween, was 45 minutes away from winning a conference championship, and JMU came from behind and beat them. So there's the storyline there.
Yeah, I know. We're going to find out real quick. When you play a team like JMU on the road, that's going to be a real bellwether, I think, for, where they are. And I think you're right. We just don't know about Luca Dorado just yet. Hoping that we're able to get him back. But, now it's kind of crunch time for that, because I think that schedule is less loaded. I think at one point or another is way more spread out with the Sun Belt this year. So it's going to be a key. It's going to be a huge key. Remember, Georgia State, and then number 1 West Virginia in Morgantown on Saturday, October the 5th. Wow.
That's a tough start. I mean, that's a tough start to go to JMU and West Virginia. What, 2 of your first 3 conference?
Well, they remember Georgia State sandwiched in between there, which thank goodness for that, but still.
Oh, and then you didn't mention after West Virginia, they come home and host number 6 Marshall.
Marshall, yeah.
That is a rough 3 of the first 4. I don't even know what to say. That is holy mackerel. That's,
you know what? Sun Belt, the SEC of men's soccer.
Well, it's a chance to get your quality resumes, but you also don't want to dig yourself a hole. So that's
we don't have an RPI yet, right? So
unofficially, UCF's in the hundreds. West Virginia's 21. Again, small sample size with particularly soccer. It's this
there you go. 20. West Virginia is number 1 in the country, number 21 in your RPI. So. All right, let's wrap this thing up as we head into the bye week. So, of course, no night shift after Saturday thing. Guys, what are you going to be doing the rest of the rest of this week? Are we all heading out to Cabo or something? What are we doing?
How's just some nice good old fashioned rest, Jeff Sharon? Holy hell! Like, what are we doing here? Have you seen?
I'm just saying,
Have you seen the upgrades on the Black and Gold Banner YouTube channel? That took some time. I could use a break.
Tremendous work on the YouTube channel. Follow us there, youtube.com/blackgoldbanneret. Eric, what about you? What are you doing?
I want to know if Gabe Davis is going to catch a pass ever again in Jacksonville or in the NFL in period. What's going on?
He got hurt the other day, didn't he?
He's been the dominant receiver. According to Doug Peterson, it's just a shoulder. He'll be back ready to go Monday night against Buffalo.
Okay, that's good news.
Facing his team, ironically.
Trevor Lawrence needs to step it up, man.
Oh,
Kyle,
wow.
you're Jags.
First of all,
what's going on here?
I'm a Niners fan. I just covered the Jags for the.
Oh, that's convenient.
Network.
Things are not much better there either with Debo Samuel out.
There's a lot of injuries. B, as somebody who practices offensive line craft, sir, you need to point the fingers there, not at my dude Sunshine behind center.
Well, as a Giants fan, I'm here to inform all of you that the Giants were the first team in the history of the National Football League to score 3 touchdowns in a game, not give up a single touchdown, and still lose said game.
Hey, it's your day to say.
When we fail in spectacular fashion. Spectacular fashion. You're going to get your money. If we're bad, we're going to be history making bad. That's what's fun.
Anything worth doing is worth doing right, Jeff Sharon.
I know. All right. Follow us on social media. We are on Threads at Black and Gold Banneret, Instagram on Black and Gold Banneret. Great photos from Brenna Johnson that we're sharing on Instagram as well. Make sure you check those out. And also, and I can't forget about Derek Warden either, because he's been sharing some really good stuff on the photos. Man, It's really fantastic. Also, hit us up on Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. Follow us there if you don't already, and of course on X at UCF Banneret _SBN. And before we go, shout out to our new member of the team, Don Struble. You can follow him at Don Documents 407. Don Documents 407. He helped us out with the nightcap, with Bryson's nightcap this week. He was out at volleyball. He was covering volleyball. He wasn't out at volleyball. He was covering volleyball and men's soccer. And got a hold of Coach Calabrese as well. I'm really happy to have Don on board. He's really awesome.
Go ahead. We are happy to have Don.
And it's not just because he and I are, he's a better drummer than me. There's no doubt about that. I merely play the drums. He's an actual drummer. I'm really excited. So if you see him out at any UCF event, make sure you say hi to Don. And you can follow him once again at Don Documents 407 on X. Of course, you can follow us at blackandgoldbanneret.com for all the latest on UCF news. Follow us individually. Kyle is at VSOTG. Eric's at Eric Lopez Elo. I am on Threads at Jeff Sharon. Of course, don't forget our boy Bryson, who is hanging out at It's Bryson Turner on X. That's going to do it for us here on Night Shift. For all of us here at Night Shift and blackandgoldbanneret.com. For Kyle and Eric, I'm Jeff Sharon. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the bye week. We will see you next week for another edition.